Hi again, everybody. Back for another installment of the one and only Ivan. So today is Friday, April the 24th, and today we're looking at another few words for our vocabulary that will come up in the book. The first one is anchored, and the the root word of anchored is anchor, which is some like that big heavy something that you have that is attached to a rope that's attached to the boat. And so if you're out on your boat and you want to stop and stay in one spot because maybe you want to go fishing, you throw over the anchor, and usually the rope is long enough to hit the bottom of the lake or the ocean. If it's not, then your boat won't stay completely still. It will still move, but if it hits the bottom of the lake or the ocean, it will keep it from the boat from moving, as long as you're not in a big storm. But hobble is to walk with trouble, like maybe it hurts to walk, or so you sort of just kind of almost hop along. You hobble. Cluttered is a messy collection of things, like a cluttered room. And musty is having a taste or smell of mold, damp or stale. Where we live, things aren't that musty here because it's not. We don't have the dampness in the air that places that are closer to water have more of that kind of a smell. It's so dry here that we don't have that. Okay, so here we go today with next part. So we know that Ruby is sad and grieving the loss of her elephant friend Stella. And we find out a little bit more about Ivan and where he has come from, and that he and his twin sister were taken from their troop. Remember, which is what we humans call a group of animals, group of gorilla. And we know that it sounds like his sister died, but he didn't, because he knew in order to try to survive, he would just have to try to forget about his life in the jungle and where he started. All right. 9,867 and 76 days. Ruby is finally asleep. I watch her chest rise and fall. Bob, too, is snoring. But my mind is still racing. For perhaps the first time ever, I've been remembering. It's an odd story to remember, I have to admit. My story has a strange shape, a stunted beginning, an endless middle. I count all the days I've lived with humans. Gorillas count as well as anyone, although it's not a particularly useful skill to have in the wild. I've forgotten so many things, and yet I always know precisely how many days I have been in my domain. I take one of the magic markers Julia gave me. I make an X, a small one, on my painted jungle wall. I make more X's and more. I make an X for every day of my life with humans. My marks look like this. X, X, X. The rest of the night, I mark the days. And when I'm done, my wall looks like this. See all of them here? All the X's. And so on until there are 9,876 X's marching across my wall like a parade of ugly insects. Maybe you can figure out how many years that is. So that would be years. To give you a little hint, there's 365 days in a year. So how many years would that be for 9,876? A visit. It's almost morning when I hear steps. It's Mac. He has a sharp smell. He walks as he weaves as he walks. He stands next to my domain. His eyes are red. He's staring out the window at the empty parking lot. "Ivan, my man," he mumbles. "Ivan." He presses his forehead against the glass. "Oh, we've been through a lot, you and me." A new beginning. We don't see Mac for 2 days, and when he returns, he doesn't talk about Stella. Mac, it says he's anxious to teach Ruby some tricks. He says the billboard is bringing in more visitors. He says it's time for a new beginning. After all afternoon and into the evening, Mac works with Ruby. Ruby's feet are looped with rope so that she cannot run. A heavy chain hangs off her neck. Mac shows her Stella's ball, her pedestal, her stool. He introduces her to Snickers. When Ruby obeys Mac, he gives her a cube of sugar or a bit of dried apple. When she doesn't, he yells and kicks at the sawdust. When Julia and George arrive, Mac is still training Ruby. Julia sits on a bench and watches them. She draws a little bit, but mostly she keeps her eyes on Ruby. Bob watches too. He's hiding in the corner of my domain under knot tag. It's raining outside, and Bob does not like damp feet. Ruby trudges behind Mac, her head drooping. Endlessly, they circle the ring. Sometimes Mac slaps her flank with his hand. Suddenly, Ruby jerks to a stop. Mac pulls on the chain hard, but Ruby refuses to move. "Come on, Ruby," Mac is almost pleading. "What is your problem?" "She's exhausted," I say to myself. "That's the problem." Mac groans. "Idiot elephant." "Idiot human," Bob mutters. "Come on, walk, Ruby," I say, although I know she's too far away to hear me. "Do what he says." "Walk," commands Mac. "Now!" Ruby doesn't walk. She plops her rump on the sawdust floor. I think maybe she's tired," Julia says. Mac wipes his forehead with the back of his arm. "Yeah, I know. We're all tired." He pushes Ruby with the heel of his boot. She ignores him. George looks over from the food court where he is wiping off tables. "Mac," he yells, "maybe you should call it a day. I'll close up." Mac yanks on Ruby's chain. She's as anchored as a tree trunk. He pulls harder and falls to his knees. "That does it," Mac says. He brushes sawdust off his jeans. "I'm through playing around." Mac stomps off to his office, and when he returns, he is carrying a long stick. The gleaming hook on its end is almost beautiful, like a silver moon. It's a claw stick. Mac pokes Ruby with the sharp point. Not hard, just a touch. I can tell he wants her to see how much it can hurt. I growl low in my throat. Ruby doesn't budge. She is a gray, unmoving boulder. She closes her eyes, and for a moment I wonder if she might have fallen asleep. "I'm warning you," Mac says. He breathes out. He's staring at the ceiling. Ruby makes a huffing sound. "Fine," says Mac. "You want to play it that way?" He draws back the claw stick. "No!" Julia cries. I'm not going to hurt her, Mac says. I just want to get her attention. Bob snarls. Mac swings. The hook slices the air a few inches above Ruby's head. See? Why you don't want to mess with me? Mac says. He draws back the claw stick again. Now move! Ruby jerks her head, flinging her trunk toward Mac. She makes a noise that sends the sawdust scattering. It makes my glass shiver. It's the most beautiful mad I've ever heard. Ruby's trunk slaps Mac. I don't see exactly where he strikes him. Somewhere below his stomach, I think. And I know he must be uncomfortable because Mac drops the claw stick and falls down on the ground and curls into a ball and howls like a baby. Direct hit, Bob says. Poor Mac. Mac groans. He stumbles to his feet and hobbles off toward his office. Ruby watches him leave. I can't read her expression. Is she afraid? Relieved? Proud? When Mac is gone, George and Julia lead Ruby from the ring. It's okay, baby. It's okay, Julia says, stroking Ruby's head. They settle Ruby in her domain and make sure she has fresh water and food. Before long, Ruby's dozing. Dad? Julia asks as George locks Ruby's iron door. Do you think that Mac would ever hurt Ruby? I don't think so, Jules, George says. At least, I hope not. Maybe we could call someone. George scratches his chin. Oh, I wish I could help Ruby, but I wouldn't know how. I mean, who would I call? The elephant cops? Besides, George looks down. I need this job, Jules. We need this job. Your mom. The doctor bills. He kisses the top of Julia's head. Back to work. You and me both. Julia sighs and reaches for her backpack. She removes a piece of paper, a bottle of water, and a small metal box. Homework first, George says, wagging a finger. Then you can paint. It's for art class, Julia explains. We're doing watercolors. I'm going to paint Ruby. George smiles. All right then. Just don't forget your spelling. Dad? Julia asks again. Dad, did you see Mac's face when Ruby hit him? George nods. Yes, he says solemnly. I did. He shakes his head. Poor Mac. He turns away, and only then do I hear him laughing. Colors. Julia opens the metal box. I see a row of little squares. Green, blue, red, black, yellow, purple, orange. The colors seem to glow. She pulls out a brush with a thin tuft of a tail at its end. She dips the brush in water and wets the paper, then taps at the red square. When the brush meets the damp paper, pink petals of color unfurl like morning flowers. I can't unfurl means to open up. The pink petals of color unfurl like morning flowers. I can't take my eyes off that magical brush. For a moment, I'm not thinking about Ruby and Mac and the claw stick and Stella. Almost. Julia touches red again, then blue, and there suddenly is the purple of a ripe grape. She touches the blue, and her paper turns to summer sky. Black and white, and now I see that she is painting a picture of Ruby. I can make out her floppy ears, her thick legs. Julia stops painting. She takes a few steps back, hands on her hips, gazing at her work. She scowls. It's not right, she says. She glances over her shoulder at me. I try to look encouraging. Julia starts to crumple up the paper, then reconsiders. Instead, she slides it into my cage at the spot where my glass is broken. Here you go, she says. A Julia original. That'll be worth millions someday. Gingerly, I pick up the paper. I do not eat a single bite of it. Oh, hey, I almost forgot. Julia runs to her backpack. She pulls out 3 plastic jars. 1 yellow, 1 blue, 1 red. She opens the jars, and an odd, not food smell hits my nose. Julia pushes the jars one by one through the opening. Then she slides some paper through. These are called finger paints, she says. My aunt gave them to me, but really, I'm too old for finger painting. I stick a finger into the red jar. The paint is thick as mud. It's cool and smooth, like bananas underfoot. I pop my finger into my mouth. Ew, it's not exactly ripe mango, but it's not bad. Julia laughs. You don't eat it. You paint with it. She grabs a piece of paper and presses her finger on it. See? Like this. I place my finger on a piece of paper. I lift it, and a red mark is there. I get a bigger glob from the pot and slap my hand down on the page. When I pull my hand off the paper, its red twin stays behind. It isn't like the ghostly handprints on my glass, the ones my visitors leave behind. This handprint can't be so easily wiped away. A bad dream. I lie awake, peeling dried red paint off my fingers. Bob, who accidentally walked on one of my paintings, is licking his red paws. Every so often, I glance over at the empty ring. The claw stick glints in the moonlight. No, no, stop! Ruby's frantic cries startle me. Ruby, I call. You're having a bad dream. You're okay. You're safe. Where's Stella? She asks, gulping air. Before I can answer, she says, never mind. I remember now. Go back to sleep, Ruby, I say. You've had a hard day. I can't go back to sleep, she says. I'm afraid I'll have the same dream. There is a sharp stick, and it hurt. I look at Bob. He looks at me. Oh, Ruby says. Oh, Mac. She puts her trunk between the bars. Do you think, she hesitates. Do you think Mac is mad because I hurt him today? I consider lying, but gorillas are terrible liars. Probably, I finally say. He ran away after that, Ruby says. Bob gives a scornful laugh. Crawled away is more like it. We are quiet for a while. Branches claw at the roof. The light rain drums. One of the parrots murmurs something in her sleep. Ruby breaks the silence. Ivan? I smell something funny. He can't help it, Bob says. I believe she's referring to the finger paints Julia gave me, I say. What are finger paints? Ruby asks. You make pictures with them, I explain. Could you make a picture of me? Yeah, maybe someday. I remember Julia's picture, the one that will be worth $1 million. I hold it up to the glass. Look, it's you. Julia made it. It's hard to see, Ruby says. There's not much moonlight. Why do I have 2 trunks? I examine the picture. Oh, those are feet. Why do I have 2 feet? That's called artistic license, Bob says. Ruby sighs. Could you tell me another story? She asks. I don't think I can ever go back to sleep. I told you all I remember, I say with a helpless shrug. Then, then tell me a new story, she says. Make something up. I try to think, but my thoughts keep returning to Mac and his claw stick. Anything yet? Ruby asks. I'm working on it. Ivan? Ruby presses. Bob said, you're going to save me. I search for true words. I'm working on that too. Ivan? Ruby says in a voice so low I can barely hear her. I have another question. I can tell from the sound of her voice that this will be a question I don't want to answer. Ruby taps her trunk against the rusty iron bars of her door. Do you think, she asks, that I'll die in this domain someday? Like Aunt Stella? Once again, I consider lying, but when I look at Ruby, the half-formed words die in my throat. No, not if I can help it, I say. Instead, I feel something tightening in my chest, something dark and hot. And it's not a domain, I add. I pause, and then I say it. It's a cage. The story. I look at the ring, layered with fresh sawdust. I look at the skylight, at the half-hidden moon. Oh, I just thought of a story, I say. Is it a made-up story or a true one? Ruby asks. True, I say. I hope. Ruby leans against the bars. Her eyes hold the pale moon in them, the way a still pond holds stars. Once upon a time, I say, there was a baby elephant. She was smart and brave, and she needed to go to a place called a zoo. What's a zoo? Ruby asks. A zoo, Ruby, is a place where humans make amends. A good zoo is a place where humans care for animals and keep them safe. Oh. Did the baby elephant get to the zoo? Ruby asks softly. I don't answer right away. Yes, I say at last. And how did she get there? Ruby asks. Well, she had a friend, I say, a friend who made a promise. How? It takes a long time, but finally Ruby returns to sleep. Ivan, Bob whispers, yawning. What you said about the zoo? How are you going to do it? Suddenly, I feel as if I could sleep for 1,000 days. I don't know, I admit. You'll think of something, Bob says confidently, his voice trailing off as his eyes close. But what if I don't? I ask, but Bob is already asleep. His little red feet dance, and I know he's running in his dreams. Remembering. Bob and Ruby sleep on. I don't sleep. I think about the promise I made to Stella and the pictures I've made for Ruby, and I remember. I remember it all. What they did. We were clinging to our mother, my sister and I, when the humans killed her. They shot my father next. And then they chopped off their hands, their feet, their heads. Ew. Something else to buy. There is a cluttered, musty store near my cage. Remember, cluttered is full of stuff. Cluttered, a messy collection of things. And musty is that moldy smell, kind of damp smell. So there is a cluttered, musty store next to my cage. They sell an ashtray there. It's made from the hand of a gorilla. Another Ivan. When morning comes and the parking lot glimmers with dew, I see the billboard on the highway. There I am, the one and only Ivan, bathed in a pink light of dawn. I look so angry, with my furrowed brow and clenched fists. I look the way my father did the day the men came. I am, I suppose, A peaceful sort, mostly. I watch the world go by and think about naps and bananas and yogurt raisins. But inside me, hidden, is another Ivan. I could tear a grown man's limb off his body. In the flicker of time, it takes a snake's tongue. In the flicker of time it takes a snake's tongue to taste the air. He could taste revenge. He is the Ivan on the billboard. I stare at the one and only Ivan, at the faded picture of Stella, and I remember George and Mac on their ladders adding the picture of Ruby to bring new visitors to the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade. I remember the story Ruby told, the one where the villagers came to rescue her, and I hear Stella's kind, wise voice. Humans can surprise you sometimes. I look at my fingers coated in red paint, the color of blood, and I know how to keep my promise. During the days I wait. During the nights I paint. I worry when Mac takes Ruby into the ring. He carries the claw stick with him all the time now. He doesn't use it. He doesn't have to. Ruby isn't fighting back anymore. She does whatever Mac asks her. Nights. I close my eyes. I dip my fingers into the paint. When I'm done with one piece of paper, I set it aside to dry. It's so small, just one sheet, and I'm going to need so many. I move on to the next, and the next, and the next. It's a giant puzzle, and I'm making the pieces one by one. By morning, my floor is covered with paintings. I hide the paintings under my pool of dirty water before Matt can see them. I don't want them to end up in the gift store, selling for $25 a piece. Sorry, $20 a piece, $25 with a frame. These paintings are for Ruby, every one of them. Project. Ivan? Ruby asks one morning when I am trying to nap. Why are you always so sleepy during the day? I've been working on a project at night, I tell her. What's a project? Oh, it's a thing, a painting. It's a painting for you, actually, I answer. Ruby looks pleased. Can I see it? Not yet. Ruby pokes with annoyance at her roped foot. She takes a breath. Ivan, do I have to do the shows with Mac today? I'm afraid so, Ruby. I'm afraid so. I'm sorry, Ruby. Ruby dips her trunk into her water bucket. That's okay, she says. I already knew the answer. Not right. It's night again, and everyone's asleep. I look at the picture I've just made, one of dozens. It's smudged and torn, a muddy blur. I place it beside the others lining my floor. The colors are wrong. The shapes are off. It looks like nothing. It's not what I'm trying to create. It's not what it's meant to be. It's not right. I don't know why. Across the parking lot, the billboard beckons, as it always does. Come to the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, home of the one and only Ivan Mighty Silverback. If I could use human words to say what I need to say, this would all be so easy. Instead, I have my pots of paint and my ragged pages. I sigh. My fingertips glow like jungle flowers. I try again. I wonder what he is trying to do, how he is planning, what he is planning, and how he's going to get it done. Anyway, there is another installment of the one and only Ivan. Today's Friday, so I'll be back on Monday. So have a great weekend, everybody. Looks like it's going to be nice. Get some sunshine, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye.